Hey everybody, Brandon with FastDataScience.ai, and welcome to another episode of This Week in AI. And this is the show where I bring you the latest news in data science, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. I take all the headlines that hit my inbox. I use a little bit of my own data science to organize those into different topics. And then I dive in a little deeper to a few articles that I think are super relevant, super important, and hopefully add a little bit of value to your day by giving you my interpretation and maybe some key takeaways that I think are really important for the way in which we interact with the field, whether we be professionals or we just be consumers who are concerned about the ubiquity of artificial intelligence. Okay, so let's go ahead and get after today's show. So on today's show, I want to talk a little bit about the theme of the show. All right, the theme of the show comes as a dire warning to those who are artificially intelligent. Yes, to you robots, I'm talking to you. That's correct. Yes, you're probably the bots that are racking up views on my videos. But that dire warning is this, is watch out, because the humans are coming. Oh yeah, you heard me. The humans are coming. Ah! Okay, what do I mean? Well, this week I saw a lot of news articles that really do recenter the importance of understanding the impacts that artificial intelligence is having on humanity, okay? But not just humanity, right? It's humanity in all of its diversity, culturally, what is happening. So we're going to take a look. Let's get rid of the zombies. We're going to take a look at 3 articles this week that I think really do reposition the importance of being human-centered in artificial intelligence. If you've been following me, you know that it's something that I'm passionate about. The idea that I do believe that as developers in this space and also as consumers, we really need to be able to understand and feel empowered to ask the hard questions about whether or not what we're doing as those developers or consumers are biasing our artificially intelligent products, or what are the consequences of those products as we interact with them? How are they affecting us psychologically, socially, all of the things that make us human and different? All right, so let's go ahead and jump into today's show. So today is April 29th, 2022. Is it a show? Is it just a YouTube video of some guy talking about AI? I don't know. I call it a show. But hey, look at it this way. I've already got the date right, so I'm doing better than I was last week, and I'm super glad that you've tuned in. So I really want to share what the substance of today is, and that is that we found 90 articles sitting in my inbox over the last week. Of those 90 articles, they were organized into 5 different topic areas. And here it is again, the theme, human-centered matters. All right, theme number 1, educating humans. Theme number 2, marketing to humans with AI. Theme number 3, working with humans with AI. Theme number 4, tools for humans in artificial intelligence. And then theme number 5, the future of humans and artificial intelligence. All right, we're going to talk about 3 articles that really highlight and reorient us around some of those human impacts in this really fast-growing field, right, of artificial intelligence. It's becoming, really one of those situations where it's so ubiquitous that we really need to bring more people into the conversation to understand and be informed and be able to really kind of help us shape the future of artificial intelligence in the right direction. Okay, no more public service announcements. Well, maybe later. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the first article. First article is A New Vision of Artificial Intelligence for the People. This article comes as a part of a series from the MIT Technology Review on artificial intelligence colonialism. Right? The idea that AI is representing a new sort of colonialism. This article really tackles a key issue, which is not something that's just about being human-centered, but the idea that when we're human-centered in our artificial intelligence, that means we are also culturally centered. Being culturally centered is fundamental because it really helps us to recognize both what we're capturing with artificial intelligence solutions and what we're missing. And that's what this article really highlights. So 2 individuals, Peter Lucas and Keone, these are life partners who live in a small town in New Zealand. They run a non-profit radio. There they are. Hi, Peter. Hi, Keone. These two are doing something super innovative for their town. They recognized that artificial intelligence, these large language models that, the Googles of the world or OpenAIs or Microsofts or whatever are producing, are building, are really focused on a limited set of languages in their ability to sort of respond to different tasks. And really one kind of key statistic that I think really highlights what's happening is that if you're not a part of a culture that uses one of those kind of dominant languages, then what's happening with these technologies is they're starting to essentially forget the technology or the cultures that are not being included. And so here's a really interesting statistic. In this particular small village, within a generation, the proportion of Te Reo, so Te Reo is the language that's used, and I hope I pronounced that right. I'm sorry if I didn't. It's the language that's used in this small village by these people. It has plummeted in just one generation from 90% to 12% of their native population. Okay, that's 90% could speak it a generation ago. Today, only 12% can speak it. That's like almost everybody to almost nobody. So what these two are doing to help battle that is they're investing in AI technologies. They purchased an AI-enabled computer that could train a language model, and they're using those individuals, those 12% of individuals who can still speak their native language, to train an artificially intelligent model that can translate English into their native language in order to retain their culture. Because at the end of the day, what this article really highlights is something that is truly fundamental to the way in which us as humans interact, and that is through language, and that language encodes our culture. And so it is extremely important in order for us to continue to be a diverse society and have diversity of ideas, which is extremely important for us to be innovative and solve new problems. We need diversity of ideas. We need ways to maintain our idiosyncrasies, our diversity, even for those small sort of cultures that are often and commonly getting forgotten in this new sort of technology world order, if you will. Great article. Highly recommend you take a deeper dive into it yourself, but it's really highlighting an important takeaway, which is that it is essential for us to really think about what we're losing whenever we're using big data to train artificial intelligence. Okay, let's get into the second article. The second article is a little bit technical. All right, I mean, just look at the length of the title of this article. This is just the title. Okay, Google AI introduces learning to prompt, a machine learning model training method that uses learnable task relevant prompts to guide pre-trained models through training on sequential tasks. Okay. So let's unpack this a little bit. This is an extremely technical article that talks about a new architecture for training models, okay? And it highlights a distinction that probably fewer in the profession, I think, are aware of or comfortable with. So we've all heard of the distinction between supervised and unsupervised learning. This particular article really talks about the distinction between supervised and continuous learning. So continuous learning is a slightly different approach to learning for building machine learning models on different task problems. Lots of task problems are classification problems. So for example, in the classic supervised sense, maybe we want to train a model to identify 4 different types of animals: dogs, cats, monkeys, and tigers. I almost said ligers. For those of you who've seen Napoleon Dynamite, you would remember the liger. But no, let's talk about tigers. In the classic supervised sense, we would train one model to identify all 4 of those things at once. Continuous learning is a different approach, where at first you train a model to just identify one part, like dogs and cats, and then maybe you train a subsequent model to identify like monkeys and tigers. Okay. The problem with that continuous learning framework, for those of you who may have used Spacey actually allows for some of this, where you can add categories to some of their pre-trained models and do some fine tuning, or even fine tuning on models that are pre-trained often have this issue, right? Where we're trying to develop new categorizations, and what can happen is if we try and tap the old categorizations that are also inherent in that model, there's this problem of catastrophic forgetting, where there's a tendency for the model to emphasize what it's been newly trained on and kind of forget what it was trained on before. So in this particular paper, they talk about a new technique to try and deal with that problem in these continuous learning frameworks where you want to introduce new tasks to train a model on. And they call this learnable prompts. And that is that prior to a model going about making a decision or essentially performing a task, you provide that model with some prompts that help to direct which task that model should focus on, so that way the model knows which weights it should be using in the new task scenario. So here's a conceptual kind of model that helps us to understand how this works at a high level. That is, you have an input like a request. Think in the classic term of language models. Hey, GPT-3, do this, right? Or am I happy? Or is this movie great? And then what happens is that query essentially gets matched with other possible sort of tasks that it could be asking for. It selects one and it passes that appended sort of input to the model to help further refine how that model focuses on which task it should be performing for that particular instance. And so in this way, Google is really looking at trying to solve some issues related to moving us closer towards general artificial intelligence and the ability to have models that can be trained on new things without forgetting the old things that they had learned. And you do it in this case by pointing to different tasks and having sort of a higher level task delegator, if you will. Okay, look, this is a new area for me too. I'm not going to act like I'm a expert in this learn to prompt kind of framework. I was really interested as I read it. I think I have a little bit of a high level understanding, but I think we're going to see a lot more of these kinds of innovations as this technology evolves. The ability for our models to continue to learn, even in the context of after learning old stuff. And so these are moving us closer to that more general intelligence state where you can have fewer models that do more things rather than more models that just do very specific things, which is sort of the world that we live in largely today in business. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into what caught my eye for this week. What caught my eye for this week, I think comes as a really interesting juxtaposition to the first article that I presented and talked about on this show today. And so here's the headline: Artificial Intelligence Getting Ready to Rebalance the Future, a New Wave of Automation Technologies in Life Science, Energy Management, and Manufacturing show that AI is more than a hype machine. Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit, because remember in the first article, we talked a little bit about, AI and its new colonialism, right? The fact that it's not rebalancing, it's creating more imbalance. But this article says, well, wait a second, maybe not. Okay. What's really interesting is I think the article starts off with this quote, right? The future is here. It's just not very evenly distributed, by William Gibson. And if we think about this, right, this makes a lot of sense in the context of, the first article, for example, that I talked about the little town in New Zealand who felt like its culture was getting forgotten by these new technologies. Well, here's William Gibson saying, yeah, that's kind of right. He's a science fiction writer from back in the 90s, and I did a little bit of research on him, and I'll tell you where that led in just a second. But before I get there, what's really cool about this article is it's really talking about a contrary view of artificial intelligence's future and the opportunity that it represents to actually rebalance disadvantage. I think this is fascinating. I mean, AI has tended, right, to really kind of be successful and concentrate around large organizations that have a lot of money and a lot of scalability, right? They have a lot of data available. But we're seeing that is actually the trend is that data, artificial intelligence and the amount of data required to really get benefit from it is lowering. And as more low code technology comes to the market, we're also seeing a lower bar of entry for people to begin to use the technologies and take advantage of them with smaller and smaller sets of data. In fact, I think even Andrew Ng said something about the fact that the future of AI may really be focusing on how we can solve problems with small amounts of data, leveraging some of the architectures and maybe even some of the pre-trained models that are now starting to become a lot more prevalent. So really interesting ideas. I think it's a really interesting alternative view that is a little bit more optimistic perhaps than some of the articles that I've covered here in the past that really try and talk about a human-centered vision for artificial intelligence. And so I think that there are some really important nuggets that we can take away from this. But I'll tell you the most important thing that I took away from this was I did a little bit of research on William Gibson, and it led me to this book. This is not a book by William Gibson, no, but it is hilarious. It is called Transcendence, the Disinformation Encyclopedia of Transhumanism and the Singularity. Okay, so I mean, this is a book you can buy on Amazon. I've got the link in my links, which will be on the next slide and also included in the comments here. But this book is a real book, and I mean, I just saw the author, so as soon as I saw the author, I was like, man, this is hilarious. It's a spoof. I don't know. Are you serious? But here's my favorite quote from somebody who reviewed the book, who read it and reviewed it. Here's what they said: "It's a psychedelic guide to the galaxy. In this adventurous, idea-rich book, bootstrapping on emerging technologies that beckon us to take control of our evolutionary destiny and lead humanity towards radical new landscapes of mind, of dream, of cosmos, of possibility. Metaphors for self-transcendence are literalized as we time-lapse our capacity to artfully remake the world and ourselves." I love the buzziness of that review. So many buzzwords, so many big ideas, right? So much vagueness. But hey, at the end of the day, I do like the message. I challenge you, as you think about artificial intelligence and how it impacts you or how you build it, right? I challenge you to think about, how can we use artificial intelligence to artfully remake the world and ourselves? I think it's possible. We just have to put some effort and some time into it and a little humanity into it. I think we can do it. Okay. All right. Here are the links. Thank you so much for listening in again today. I will also put the links in the comment, as I said. Again, I appreciate all the support. Continue watching, continue learning about artificial intelligence and how it impacts your lives. Please feel free to reach out, subscribe, share, do all the things that, other people who do this ask you to do. Again, appreciate it. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. And I will see you next week with another edition of This Week in AI. Da-na-na-na, da-da-da-da-da. Yes, and maybe one day I'll have music too. All right, bye.